Good evening. We want to thank everybody for coming out, and we're going to kick off our program by having the Voices of Pleasant Grove Baptist Church in Canton sing.
Amen.
I did. The class lasted 7.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. We're so pleased to be here with you this afternoon. Just pray for us as we sing this selection. Right on, King Jesus. Right on, King Jesus. No man cannot hinder me. Right on, King Jesus. Right on. No man.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Hey, everybody. How we doing today?
Fine.
That was super weak. How we doing today? Woo! That's what I want to hear. Thank you again to the Voices of Pleasant Grove for your beautiful song and for kicking us off. We are here today because we believe that we have to move forward together, and we refuse to take one step back. So before we get started, I just want you to say it with me. Forward together, not one step back. Forward together, not one step back. That's right. My name is Chelsea White, and on behalf of Down Home, North Carolina, I wanted to welcome you all and thank you so much for joining us for the Poor People's Town Hall of Haywood County. Too loud? Yeah. Thank you. This event was made possible through the contributions of many hardworking, amazing individuals, and you can recognize them with shirts like these, or they can raise their hand if you've been a part of the planning process of all of this. Ann, Russ, Kathy, there we go. The primary organizations behind this event are Down Home, North Carolina, and Haywood County's own chapter of the NAACP. We do have tables at the entry doors that have flyers with information for all of the organizations that are featured in today's town hall, and there's also the option on the back of your program to opt in to each of the organization's newsletters. So if you haven't turned in that back sheet yet, make sure to give it to one of our volunteer organizers or turn it in at the table. Before we jump into all the fun stuff, I did want to give Mr. Philip Gibbs a couple of minutes to give a welcome from the NAACP. So.
Greetings from the NAACP. It is wonderful to look out and see so many people who care about our community. So you know, the legislature has refused, they have absolutely refused to expand Medicaid, which impacts the disabled, those who are in between jobs, and those without health insurance. The poor are getting poor while the rich continue to get richer. So now it's more important than ever to build a coalition of the disenfranchised in our society in order to have a voice in Raleigh and in Washington. So we urge you to join the Poor People's Campaign along with the NAACP. This chapter in Haywood County was formed in 2014, and at this point in time we're still trying to find our mission here. But so far, we've been involved in a few things. Voter registration. We participated in the Monday March and hosted screenings of films such as Democracy for Sale, Beast of the Southern Wild. Now, let me expand on something before I go on. For those who may not know, that the NAACP is not just a black organization. The NAACP is a human rights organization. It don't matter whether you're white, black, gay, straight, lesbian, whatever kind of label that is tagged on you, first of all, you are human, and the NAACP stand for human rights. So don't have any fears about joining us, because we need you. We need all of your thoughts and your help to make us stronger, to fight injustice and equality. Now, we've heard from our community, we've heard from our members, and it is time that we come to become allies for those who are shut out of power. So again, I encourage you all to join the Poor People's Campaign along with the NAACP. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Phil. So a few housekeeping things before we get started. I did want to make sure that everyone knew that the bathrooms are located down the hallway to your right, ADA accessible bathrooms are through the door to your left. And there will be a chance for questions at the end of the event. So you all have a note card in your seat, or most of you do. You can grab one from the back table if you don't. If you can write your questions on the note card, because we're not going to have time to get to everybody's, that way I can personally follow up with you and answer any questions that might arise during the event. So, today, we are joining a national movement that is rapidly gaining momentum. Today is a special day. It's the anniversary of Selma, of the crossing of the Selma Bridge. Selma and the Alabama Black Belt were the battlegrounds for the voting rights movement that resulted in the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Alabamians stood up and peacefully fought for the right to vote. And then, on March 7th in 1965, a group of 525 African American demonstrators gathered at Brown's Chapel to demand the right to vote. They walked across Edmund Pettus Bridge, where they were met with 50 state troopers. It's called Bloody Sunday because of the bloody confrontation that happened on that bridge. Sorry. So this movement is led, thank you, by North Carolina's own Reverend William Barber and Reverend Liz Theo Harris. It is a movement that is revived from the vision of Martin Luther King Jr. that he had 50 years ago. A vision of coming together around our shared struggles. The struggles of poverty that have been wrongly normalized in the world's richest country. Struggles that are the deliberate outgrowth of the evils of racism, the war economy, ecological devastation, and the nation's distorted reality. Dr. King saw that poverty was not just another issue, and that poor people were not a special interest group. Throughout his many speeches in the last year of his life, he described the unjust economic conditions facing millions of people worldwide. He held up the potential of the poor to come together and transform the whole of society. He knew that for the load of poverty to be lifted, the thinking and behavior of the critical mass of American people would have to be changed. To accomplish this change of consciousness, a new and unsettling force had to be formed. In other words, the poor would have to organize to take action together around our immediate and basic needs. In doing, he knew that we could become a powerful social and political force, capable of changing the terms of how poverty is understood and dispelling the myths and stereotypes that uphold the mass complacency and leave the root causes of poverty intact. He described this force as a multiracial, nonviolent army of the poor, a freedom church of the poor. So we come together today to hear from and form our own army of the poor here in Haywood County, to gain a better understanding of the history of the Poor People's Campaign, to hear music and poetry that opens the vulnerable pieces of ourselves, to share stories of connected suffering and a struggle to survive through homelessness, poverty, racism, oppression, and violence, and to understand how we can move forward together and take responsibility for uprooting the causes of these shared struggles. And we must move forward together, because this event is just the beginning of your call to action. It is not the means to the end that we seek. You don't uproot anything by talking about it, but you have to dig in and you have to get your hands dirty. Events like these will never fix the broken system that feeds the poison of poverty. It's what you do after this event that reveals your true values. After we hear from our neighbors, we are going to invite each of you to join us in saving the very soul of our nation and stepping up to the plate and joining us in pledging to take action through 40 days of moral resistance and nonviolent civil disobedience. Because massive civil disobedience is the strategy that we call on to expose our wounds so that we might be able to heal them. In the words of Dr. King, there is nothing wrong with a traffic law that says you have to stop for a red light. But when a fire is raging, the fire truck goes right through that red light and normal traffic had better get out of its way. Or when a man is bleeding to death, the ambulance goes right through those red lights at top speed. Disinherited people all over the world in our own country are bleeding to death from deep social and economic wounds. They need brigades of ambulance drivers who will have to ignore the red lights of the present system until the emergency is solved. Massive civil disobedience is a strategy for social change, which is at least as forceful as an ambulance with its siren on full. We are those ambulance drivers, and we must recognize the emergency at hand. At the end of this town hall, not only will we ask for you to pledge, but we'll also open the floor to sharing and to more questions from all of you, so we can give you the details on those 40 days of action, and we ask that you please be respectful and hold your questions until the end. In the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to Lois Cullens to get us started.
I'm going to thank you once again for being here, and I would be lacking if I didn't let you know what Damn Home does. We are pushing this Poor People's Campaign. We're a new group, and we're trying to get out there, and we have action. We're addressing affordable housing, health care, the opioid disaster that's going on, the epidemic, and the Poor People's Housing. So, this campaign is about the Poor People's Campaign, and I want to introduce somebody to you that can tell us a history. This is a great man. I've known him for years, since I was a little girl, and he's always spread the mighty word of God, the love, felt confidence in people, and did what all of us should be doing. The next voice you will hear is the voice of Mr. Lewis Langston.
They didn't tell me she was going to be here. When we talk about civil rights, I'm a little older than most of you here, looking around. And I was there in Chicago when Dr. Martin Luther King came to start the Poor People Campaign. In fact, he met a hostile audience. The ministers weren't sure what his objective was. He didn't seek out a wealthy place to live. He went to live with the people. So it made me understand that this truly was a man of God. And when we think about civil rights, in 1908, in fact, in my home state, there was a race riot in Illinois that triggered the need for civil rights. And that was the beginning of the NAACP, where 2 whites and 1 black, Dr. Du Bois, Mary White Ovington, and Moorfield Story, started the NAACP. So when we talk about civil rights, the history of the Poor People's Campaign goes all the way back to 1908. But now in December the 4th, 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King came to Chicago and started this campaign all on his own. In fact, even some of the ministers that were in Atlanta and different places around the country couldn't understand what he was trying to do. And yet Dr. King started the Poor People's Campaign. At that time, the nation was really divided. Do you remember reading about it probably, that the Vietnam War was going on, and he took a stand against it, and people took a stand against him as well. But after Dr. King's assassination in April 1968, this multiracial mobilization of the poor, it really got going. In fact, you remember the information that we hear about Resurrection City. And the Poor People Campaign just kept going and growing. And then the Job Corps came, and peace and freedom was all over in June 1968. What else happened? In Chicago, we had another race riot there as well. But when we think about the Poor People's Campaign, as we read about it and talk about it, there's a place for you as well. So we're talking about 50 years after Dr. King, but the same needs, the same poverty, the same racism, yes, and the same war is taking place. So you have a role yourselves. All you have to do is get involved.
I told them I was bashful, but they said I've never heard tell of me being bashful or shy. But I thank the Lord for everything that has been said thus far. And I think they were holding up. We have some applications for the NAACP in the back if anyone would like to become a member. And we'd also like to know that our president, as most of you know, is Attorney Chuck Dixon. He's our president, so we're striving together. You know, and one reason why I'm always telling people before I have a prayer is that we're all children of God. And if we're going to make heaven, I don't know if anybody want to go to hell, but if you want to go to heaven, we better get to know who Jesus is. For he's the way, he's the truth, and the light. And what gets me is in John, 1 John, it says, how can you say you love God who you have not seen, and hate your brother who you see daily? Amen? Amen. God created each and every one of us, and if it wasn't for him, none of us would be here today. And I just thank God for loving us enough to look beyond all our faults and give his only son to die for our sins, that we might have a right to the tree of God. May we bow our heads. Eternally and all-wise God, our Heavenly Father, we pause just to give you thanks for your grace, mercy, and your love you bestowed upon each and every one of us. And we ask your blessing upon each and every one under the sound of my voice, dear Heavenly Father, and that you'll speak to our hearts and mind and give us listening ears and receiving hearts of all the things that have been said and done thus far that will go on. Lord, you are welcome in this place. And each and every one who have gathered here, you are welcome. And we say thank you for taking the time to give of yourself in a time such as this. And we ask all these blessings in the name of Jesus, our Savior and our Redeemer. Amen.
I am so honored to be here tonight to share a poem that I wrote in December of 2016. My name is Margaret Accor, and you probably have your own memories of what was happening in December of 2016, but I personally felt myself beginning to slip into a little bit of panic, maybe a little despair, and I didn't want to be stuck there. And so I wrote this poem really as a to-do list for myself, and it's called Ways to Live on a Sinking Ship. Number 1, without fail, be kind. Number 2, do nothing to speed the inevitable. Practice grace. Number 3, refuse to blame the captain. This will seem unreasonable. Don't waste your precious time. Number 4, study the water. Work to discern its specific color, temperature, mineral content. Contemplate the benevolent life forms within it. Fall deeply in love with its majesty. Number 5, hold hands. Make eye contact. Smile. Tell your fellow passengers you love them, that it was marvelous knowing them, that there's no one in the world with whom you'd rather sink. Number 6, sing to those who panic. They will meet a wretched end, and the not death they're experiencing now is even worse. Sing them back to their own primordial time, when all the sounds of the world were song, quiet, ethereal, beautiful, whale song. Number 7, refuse to witness any effort made to sabotage peace. Your work now is keeping your heart soft, so you must not watch the saboteurs at their work. Number 8, tell the children stories. Use your full strength to transport them to long ago times when you were a child, when your parents were children, when the very earth was a maiden. Make them laugh. Number 9, when the terror comes, give yourself as an offering to the vast ocean, to the stars in the clear night, to the whales, the terns, the plankton. Number 10, in fact, the terror is already here. It has been for quite some time. Do it now. Offer yourself. Pour yourself wholly out in praise of all that ever was, all that is, and all that ever will be. Thank you.
All right, we're going to enjoy some music by David LaMotte while we switch out some of our speakers.
Friends, it's good to be with you tonight. I'm going to play you a gentle song to start with. I'll pick up the energy a little bit more when we're turning the corner to doing some work, but we're about to hear some stories that are personal and require the space to be spoken into, right? So I'm going to try to create a little bit of space here with you together and hold up the moment that we're in right here.
Open wide and taste the light falling from the stars tonight. This cannot be quantified. Open wide and taste the light. Lay your cheek against the song. Let it hold you firm and strong, ringing like a carillon. Lay your cheek against the song. Feel the heartbeat of the drum. Long ago this was begun. We are old who once were young. Feel the heartbeat of the drum. Drink the notes like drops of wine. Warming spirits, slowing time, winding like an arbor vine. Drink the notes like drops of wine. Standing in the circle here, kindred spirits gathered near. On my cheek a sacred tear. Standing in this circle here, Open wide and taste the light falling from the stars tonight. This cannot be quantified. Open wide and taste the light.
Good evening. My name is Steve Wall. I've been a pediatrician in Haywood County for almost 30 years. I became a doctor after 7 years as an inner-city community organizer in inner-city Detroit. And I wanted to give a little historical perspective to some aspects of the struggle that we're involved in. I think almost every progressive movement in our country's history triggers a backward-looking and often a very vicious counter-reaction. You look way back in the progressive age of the 1920s when women finally got the vote. Unfortunately, mostly white women got the vote. Child labor, at least in northern factories, was finally abolished. Public health and social welfare programs began, and some were funded by a radical idea of a progressive income tax, mostly on the wealthy. No longer would 290 out of every 1,000 children born die before the age of 5. 290 out of every 1,000 children died before the age of 5 in 1912. No longer would giant monopolies like U.S. Steel and Standard Oil control the political and economic fate of this country. But then in the 1920s, there was a reaction to this progressive era. And that brought mass deportations of undesirable aliens in the 1920s. Big business and Wall Street ran amok. Trade wars, strike-breaking. The Roaring '20s, with Jim Crow and lynching as the ever-present tool to keep all working people divided and powerless. The result of all this was the Great Depression, where 1 out of 4 Americans was out of work. But by the 1950s and 60s, returning black soldiers from World War II who were denied access to the GI Bill, freedom riders in the South, they fought back. They inspired the women's movement. They inspired the anti-war movement. There were powerful winds of change blowing in this country. The counter-response was a turning away from social justice and progress. This is Reaganism. A step-by-step attack on the New Deal of Franklin Roosevelt, on the Great Society of the 60s, an attack on Medicare, on Medicaid, and above all on Social Security, which to this day, every year keeps 22 million elderly Americans out of poverty, every year. These were the hated programs that the right wing began to target, to dismantle. The Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute in Raleigh, all these think tanks developing strategy to do away with these programs. But the democratic structures of our society have been able, up till now, to slow down and even sometimes thwart these waves of McCarthyism, of Nixon-era criminality, of the Bush-Cheney-Rumsfeld doctrine of eternal war. And the election of Barack Obama brought hope as never before, that racism, social inequality, environmental destruction, and the lack of health care for millions of people would all finally be dealt with. But from the moment Obama was elected, the moment he took office, the reaction, the swing of the pendulum away from that hope towards hatred, fear, and despair has been as dramatic and as frightening as never before, at least since the election of Abraham Lincoln himself. This attack is aimed at the very foundation of our democracy: voting rights, freedom of the press, independence from foreign influence, and from corruption of our sacred institutions. Every social and governmental agency is under attack, except, of course, the war machine. Martin Luther King explained the link between the sacrifice of the people of this country to the war machine. Somehow we can find the money to fund a new fighter jet, the F-35. Do we need this? $1.5 trillion to fund a new fighter. But we can't fund education, prenatal care, public schools, mental health to fight the opioid crisis. The military budget of our country still is greater than that of the next 7 countries combined. In every generation, mass movements arise. The Poor People's Campaign, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, the youth-led anti-gun violence movement. These are real and powerful. But the threat to American democracy and to the hope for a better life for the people of this country is as dangerous, as vicious as it has ever been, maybe more than ever. When Benjamin Franklin was leaving the Constitutional Convention in 1787, he was asked, "What have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" And he replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." The choice is ours, and the time is now.
Good evening. I'm Alice Lory, and I'm honored to be here. Thanks for asking me. In 1961, my daughter Natalie was 3 years old. Little Red Riding Hood was playing at the Colonial Theater, downtown Canton. I thought she would enjoy the movie, so I decided we would go. When my husband Nat came home for lunch, noticed we were all dressed up. That's what we did back in the day, you know. Natalie in her frilly dress, lacy socks, patent leather shoes. He asked, "Where are you going?" "To the movie," I replied. "What movie? Are you going to Asheville?" "No, I'm going to the Colonial." "Now you know you can't go to the Colonial." "Watch me," I said. "Maybe you should call and ask if you can come." "No, I'll call and tell them my plans." I called, identified myself, name, race, and plans. "Oh, you can't do that," the lady said. "Why?" I asked. "What's the problem?" "Do you want to talk to the manager?" she asked. "Yes, put him on." Again, I identified myself, name, race, and plans. "Oh, come right on," he told me. Now I noticed that he continued to walk up and down the aisles. I didn't know that Nat had asked him to please keep an eye on his wife and baby. After the movie, he told us that he was glad we came and this was a good time, because the theater was filled with other mothers and their children, and he was anxious to see their reaction. We all enjoyed the movie together with no problem, and that ended segregation in the Colonial Theater in Canton, North Carolina.
Hello, my name is John Womer. Though neither my wife nor I are from around here, my wife's family is. We have lived here before in the early 2000s, but moved to Pennsylvania around 2007 to help a family member of mine. We moved back here about 2 years ago to help, we thought, one of my wife's cousins. Our household consisted of myself, my wife, our teenage adopted son, and several dogs and cats. As it turns out, her cousin was not ill as she had stated, but was addicted to opioids. She had already tapped out all of the local family members of both goodwill and money and was seeking new sources of money and shelter. When we arrived, she realized we weren't going to be the source of plenty she thought we would. After some family drama, she told us that we were not welcome to live with her after all. Now, we needed a place to live after only 3 weeks. An uncle offered to let us live with him until we could get back on our feet. We moved into his house, which was a rental, but this would only last a month as his landlord decided that we could not stay. My wife at this time still had not found a job. I was working part-time at Walmart, and we had no place else to go. We turned to a local organization that assists the homeless, the Open Door, and because we were a family, they were able to place us into a room in a local motel, the Lodge. For the next 5 weeks, our home was a single room, 2 queen beds, and a bath. Now that's 2 adults, a 15-year-old boy, 2 dogs and 4 cats in 1 room with 2 beds. For our first week's rent, we had to borrow money from a friend in Pennsylvania. This gave us time to start asking for money from local charities and churches. This happened in April, and most of these aid groups were toward the end of their fiscal year. To us, this meant that while most wanted to help, they had little resources to do so. So our daily routine became a series of phone calls, follow-ups, and door knocking to get perhaps another day or two's worth of room payment. I was working part-time. My wife was searching for work and room rent. Our son struggling in school with the pressures of both our confined space and fitting into a new school. It was exhausting, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Too little space, too little resources, too much nothing to live on. We came to a point where we were 2 days away from running out of rent money. It was at this point, facing loss of our pets, the prospects of living in our vehicle, which we were 2 payments behind on, and loss of our belongings, that the good Lord stepped in. The husband of our aunt spoke with the owners of the business he worked at. They also owned rental properties and had a trailer that had come open. It was not in great shape, but it was a place to live. Good people, these folks allowed us to move in immediately with down payment and first rent to be made in installments. By now, my wife had secured a job, and within a month, I went from part-time at Walmart to full-time with my new landlords at one of their stores. Good acts by churches, organizations, family, friends, and unknown individuals had contributed to keep a bad situation from becoming much, much worse. Jesus had watched over us and brought us through. And while these are the details of our story, there's another lesson that I hope to convey to those of you listening today. Homelessness can happen to anyone. We left a 2-bath, split-level home in Pennsylvania to come here to aid a family member. We were not forced to. It was a choice to do right by a family member, a good deed. 3 months later, we were without significant income, living in a hotel 1 step from the street. So often, homelessness is portrayed as the fault of the people who find themselves there. They aren't hardworking enough. They're on drugs. They somehow deserve it. And most insidiously, it can never happen to my family. But in today's economy, the majority of Americans are but 1, perhaps 2 paychecks away from living in a hotel room or worse. Understand, living homeless with a family is a harsh reality to face. It is a stigma that makes it a cruel time in one's life. Resources to help are thin and strained by demand, but the idea that it is somehow a poor person's disease is a fallacy. Until we face the truth of homelessness and work on real solutions to avoid it, anyone can find themselves suddenly and unexpectedly without a home. Thank you.
Well, I'm moved to have this time with y'all tonight and to share the stage with folks who are courageously doing important work and telling courageous stories. I can't help but notice that both of those stories we just heard had some really grim, harsh reality in them, and they also had some profound hope. And I think our culture tends to have a story about hope, which is that hope is cute. It's it's naive, it's childish, right? Like you can be hopeful while you're little, and then you grow up and you experience the harshness of the world, and you give up on some of that hope. I think that's the story that we're told. But that's a very thin definition of hope. Hope is not the same thing as optimism. Hope isn't believing everything's fine. Hope is pointing our lives toward the reality we want to see, taking steps in that direction. Hope is a choice, it's not a circumstance. And that's how I was able to write this song and call it Hope. It was inspired by church burnings in the 90s. I wish I could say that those were all ancient history, but of course they're not. But the story that didn't make the headlines much was about the rebuilding of all those churches. These are African American churches that were burned down by angry white people who thought that they were their enemies. They didn't understand.
In the Southland, we're lighting the night sky with a fire from a church burning down. When the sun comes up again, the white and black men stand and stare at the soot on the ground. They raise up their weapons, they summon their strength, and they cut at the wood with their swords. But they're striking their blows against hatred, 'cause they're hammering nails into boards. I keep thinking I hear the 4 horsemen, and turning around to see it's just the Pony Express again. They've got a message for me. I got a lot of hope for the future. Got a lot of faith, things can work out fine. Got a lot of dreams for a better world. I got a lot of work to do if I'm gonna make them mine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My town is still mostly divided. Oh, it's good to see some mixing up tonight. Know that it's all complicated. The issues are not black and white. Hey, but how can we come any closer if I just shake my head where I stand? There can never be any handshakes until somebody puts out their hand. Got a lot of hope for the future. Got a lot of faith, things can work out fine. Got a lot of dreams for a better world. Got a lot of work to do if I'm gonna make them mine. I got a lot of hope, yeah. Got a lot of faith, yeah, yeah, yeah. Got a lot of dreams. Got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of work to do, yeah. Got a lot of work to do. Got a lot of dreams.
We're happy to kick off the next phase of our program with some personal stories. On our program, you'll see Holly Parton, which is a young lady in our community. She wasn't able to make it tonight, but we have her mom, Vanessa Parton, is going to speak for Holly.
Well, I actually was hoping that he would play that song longer because I don't have anything written down. I was real honored and actually amazed when Lois called me and said, "Vanessa, is Holly going to still be on the program?" I said, "What program?" She said, I have talked to Holly and she has agreed to be on the Poor People's Campaign Program. I said, oh, really? For those of you that know Holly, she's kind of boisterous, but she's a little shy. I told Lois that she probably would have to work, and that's where she is now. Lois explained to me what this was all about. She was talking about the people being poor, young people struggling, and all that. So all I'm just going to say is just a few little words. Holly is 31 years old. Holly graduated from Pisgah. She went to HCC, that's what it's called now, HCC, Haywood Community, to do hair. And then she got pregnant. Got pregnant at a young age like a lot of us did. So she decided to stay out of school. Then she started working right up here, right down the street, right here at HVO. She worked 11 years at HVO. She came to me and told me, she said, Mom, I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna do hair. I said, you gonna do what? You're gonna quit your job after 11 years? Her desire is to do hair. So what she did, she quit a job to search for her dream. Holly is now attending HCC, Haywood Community College, and she's working. She has a son, my grandson, he's in the audience there. She does have struggles, like we all do. I told her, I said, Holly, this phase of your life, I want you to consider how hard times are. You know, how our economic situation is. You know, get in there and do what you're gonna do and, you know, get her done, like they say. So anyway, my thing is we have young adults, like I say, she's 31 years old. We have young adults who are striving. We have older adults like me that's over 60s that's striving. And we see how our economic situation is right now. And I don't think it's gonna get any better. But I just desire your prayers that you will pray for Holly, and not only Holly, all these young adults that have to face the demons that we have in the White House today. Thank you. Y'all could have stood up for me too.
Hi, my name is Connie, and I've been asked to tell you what it feels like to be homeless. For me, it brings back memories from my childhood of being worthless, empty, unloved, and alone, like I was nothing but a burden to others, and I didn't deserve to exist. The fact that I was always chicken to end my life caused the shame to multiply. I'm a survivor of child abuse and have worked towards recovery for decades and decades. For me, what is hardest about being homeless is that every time the progress I make towards recovery, it's fallen, towards recovering is gone. I'll be safe, feeling safe in a community and be a part of a community. Sorry. Yeah, and thank you. The hardest part about being homeless is that I've made progress when I have a permanent home for a while. I feel like I'm a part of a community. I feel safe, but something always happens. Something makes everything fall apart, and it's like being back at start all over again on my recovery. Second page. I've been homeless many times, most of those in recent years, and it's harder as I'm older and my health isn't good. I've been without transportation, which affects my ability to access health care. And when I tried to get health care at a local for-profit hospital, I was escorted from the building by a big, scary security guard because I owed them money. I've been homeless because as a survivor, I don't fit well into this world. I still struggle from time to time what to do, what to say, what is expected of me. I get defensive and take things wrong, take things personally and that are not meant that way. I worked hard to get through college. I paid for every penny of it except the first $100, which the Kiwanis Club gave me when I graduated from high school. The school expected me to go to college. My parents didn't. They don't believe in education, never believed in education. I taught school and I worked in the mental health field, but all the while I was emotionally numb and my memories were blocked. My recovery started with a divorce in 1982. With memories came pain and anger, and eventually I started to receive Social Security disability in 1994. I can't live in public housing with my PTSD symptoms and with my breathing problems around cigarettes. But I have managed to form an organization. It's called CSCAT. It stands for Supportive Environment for Adult Survivors of Child Abuse and Trauma. I've been asked to say what inspired me to create CSCAT through my recovery. And to me, it was very simple. I couldn't accept everything that has happened to me in my life if I didn't see there was some purpose in it, some meaning, something I could do with what I've learned. One of my most favorite quotes is Leo Roston when he says, the purpose of life is to matter, to have it make some difference that you lived at all. And I can quote Reverend Barber on a Monday in Asheville. I heard him say, apathy is moral suicide. 80% of all abuse occurs in the home by a parent or guardian. That leaves us with no one to advocate for us. The only ones who can advocate for us are those of us who have some recovery to speak out and make the issues known. We're not just lazy people. We're people struggling, and we're the ones you find homeless and in the streets. CSCAT has an educational program that we can present to your church or your civic group or your community groups of any kind if anybody's interested. We have sign-up sheets, we have educational materials I have handouts from the National Coalition of Homelessness back on the back table, so please stop by and I hope I hear from some of you. Thank you.
And the microphone's right in front of you.
Okay.
You can just stand right there.
Am I okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's the bar.
All right.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous. Hi, my name is Sam Wilds, and I'm 25 years old, and I'm from Canton, North Carolina. And I'm totally blind. I've lived in these mountains my whole entire life. In my 25 years, I have experienced everything you can think of in life. The Poor People's Campaign, to me, it doesn't just mean one issue, it means all the subjects. And it connects all of us, and we can share all the connections. As in housing, health, being poor, and the services that are provided to you. We are all connected in that way. I cannot go shopping, I cannot go to the movies, I cannot go hang out with my friends without the transportation. I can't do anything that a regular 25-year-old would do. I have to rely on other people and other family members, and sometimes they just don't know what to do with me. Not only am I blind, but I also have a genetic condition called Bardet-Biedl syndrome. It is so rare that a lot of doctors have never really heard of it before. I was diagnosed when I was 5 when they noticed that I had a retinal condition. Since then, I've had a lot of health issues. I stay sick all the time. Thanks to Medicaid, I can live somewhat of a comfortable life, but there's a cost to it. I have to pay most of my my SSI money goes to co-pays and medications that I need to live a comfortable life. My health, the way I live, and to be comfortable is at risk because people think that Medicaid is free for people that are too lazy to work, but they forget about me. A lot of people have asked me, how can I be so cheerful even if I'm blind? Well, my answer is, I tell them, you have to tell yourself that you can do it. You have to tell yourself that each and every day that you can do it, that you're worth being on this earth. Because if you don't, it can get you down. And all these issues can make you feel like you're worth nothing. I think everybody is special, unique, and worthy. If we could just hear each other's stories. When you know no one's story, you can actually get to know the person, and we can actually help other people in this world. We have to understand each and every one of us in order to be in order in this world, in order to shape the world that works for us. I think it's possible for us to fix these problems when we come together as a community, and the time is now. Thank you.
Talk about choosing hope. Thank you, Sam. I've played you a couple of songs I wrote, so I'm going to play you one that you might recognize here before we go home, or before I stop my part of this very important event tonight. It seems to me that part of why we're here is to learn, to be educated. Part of why we're here is to be inspired, to lift each other up. And part of why we're here is to forge connections, to build community. Because that's the only way any change really happens. It's not about heroes. It's about all of us doing a little bit. And we're going to be asked to show up in some pretty serious ways. Here's to showing up.
Love is but a song we sing. Fear is the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, make the angels cry. Though the bird is on the wing, you may not know why. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. come and some may go, and you will surely pass. When the one that left us here returns for us at last, we are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass. So come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. If you hear the song we sing, then you will understand. You hold the key to love and fear in your trembling hand. Yeah. There's just one key unlocks them both. It's there at your command. So come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. I think this song still speaks to us in really important ways. That last line, I want to make sure you caught that last verse. It said, you hold the key to love and fear in your trembling hand. There's just one key unlocks them both, and it's there at your command. So come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Right now, right now, yeah. Right now, right now, right now, right now.
Ooh, oh my God, I feel moved. How are people feeling out there? Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm Bridget Flaherty. I'm the director of Down Home North Carolina. We are coming to the part of the program where we're talking about what we can do in this room to end poverty with the Poor People's Campaign, with the organizations that are in Haywood working 365 to bring justice here and across the state. I just want to give a little bit of a sort of timeline as to where we are in the Poor People's Campaign before calling on us in this room tonight to take a pledge to do nonviolent direct action as a part to end poverty, the war economy, ecological devastation, just pain. So the Poor People's Campaign, the 50th anniversary, the revival, was started on December 4th. 30 states have pledged to take part of the Poor People's Campaign. On February 5th, all 30 states went to their state capitals and they delivered a letter putting on call our elected officials, knowing that there is a national moral movement that is bringing the demands to bring justice to our communities this spring. Where we are now is that we are getting prepared to be those agents of change. We are learning how to come together and how to take direct action so that when we start the 40 days of moral resistance from Mother's Day to June 21st, that we are a force of transformation. So between now and Mother's Day, we are going to be coming together and we're doing trainings together here in Haywood and across all the 30 states plus that are going to be doing these actions together. So moving into that pledge, I want people to sort of center themselves and feel their purpose for why they are here. Because stories impact us. They bring us back to our fundamental selves as humans who strive to connect with each other, to empathize with each other, and care for each other. And after story tonight of people going through incredibly hard times that nobody should be forced to go to in a country as wealthy as ours, I ask you, how much more can you tolerate? How much more can we tolerate? This is a part where we should be getting angry. I need to hear you, because nobody, can you imagine being in these shoes? I bet some of us in these rooms have been in these shoes and are not up at a mic. And that is morally wrong. This economy, this society can do better. It is not enough to sit here and listen to these brave people tell their stories and then to go home and act like everything is normal. This is not normal. It's time to look deep within ourselves and ask, how bad do things have to get? How many more people need to suffer before I stand up and end poverty? We can end poverty because poverty is a structural design. It is not the flaw of an individual. Rather, it is the outcome of deliberate choices made by people in power. And what do we know about people in power? I know that if people in power do not want things to change, they don't change. Well, they don't change until a group of people say enough is enough. I no longer want to live with a boot on my neck. I am ready to take some risks, and I deserve more. My family deserves more. You see, as Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And with this fundamental appreciation of understanding that inequality is about power, then it's up to us to build our own agency and capacity to take the power back and end economic, racial, gender inequality once and for all. Y'all, we are living in an extraordinary moment. And choices made right now have real consequence. And actions we take right now have unusual significance. I look around this country and I see real acts of courage from everyday people like you and me. I see the teachers in West Virginia. I see the students in Stoneman Douglas. I see the dreamers. I see women breaking silence around sexual harassment. And I think to myself, this is how we win. Taking courageous action together, this is how we win, and this is how we have always won. We have an opportunity to unite with tens of thousands of people from across this country and within our own state, across all races, creeds, religions, classes, everything else that divides us, to demand a moral agenda for the common good. Like I said, from Mother's Day to June 21st, the Poor People's Campaign is calling for 40 days of moral resistance, of non-violent direct action, to consecrate a new movement to transform the political, economic, and moral structures of society. Now is the time for everyone in this room to find the moral energy to risk, to venture into uncertainty, and take nonviolent direct action that is rooted in our core values of belovedness and hopefulness. Before we hear from Sam, I just want to ask you, where do you find your courage? How do you access hope over fear? And are we ready to commit to one another to achieve it?
Hi everyone, my name is Sam Malone. And there's not too much in this world that scares me, but what really does is going back to jail. I've been in jail when I was 22, and I met a man there that he didn't belong there. He was on his umpteenth charge for substance abuse, and the prison system in Nebraska was just throwing him away. It was a dark hole, and we had 4 concrete slabs to sleep on. And he was looking at 20 years in prison. When someone is in his position, a man there, again on his umpteenth charge for substance abuse, they don't need to be jailed, they need help. Because life deals us a crappy hand, we shouldn't be punished for that. We deserve a society that protects our mental health. We deserve a society that protects our quality of life. God forbid anyone in this room or anywhere else has to make a decision between surviving and doing something that lands them in a jail cell. But I'm here today because I'm saying that it is unacceptable for anyone, anywhere to have to make that choice. We should never make or have to make a choice like that, and I'm willing to go back to jail to end the cycle of poverty. First and foremost, I'm taking your best from my children. I'm going to make life for my kids and myself better. It's also about Lois and Joanna and Sam and Bridget, anyone else who are trying to help in any way they can help. The ends are definitely worth the means. If you're tired of being looked down on, tired of being thrown away, tired of being seen as population garbage, then let's do this to make a change. We are the 99%, and 99 will always beat 1. By me being willing to get arrested and facing my fears, I want to show that I am scared, but I am also excited. Getting arrested with a purpose, I'll be in the company of so many brave men and women from history who are also ready for a change. My life will feel like it has new meaning by participating in this action. Participating shows that we care about something bigger than ourselves. And if I have to be uncomfortable, then God knows I will be uncomfortable. Because I know that what I'm doing is meaningful and it is definitely worth it. But I cannot do it alone. Without all of you, we aren't we, I'm just me. I need all of you to stand beside me and do what needs to be done. And ask you who here will take the pledge with me to support nonviolent civil disobedience and do what needs to be done to make a change.
All right, so that means it's your turn. Everyone, or almost everyone, should have a pledge card in your chair. If you are sitting next to an empty chair that has a pledge card in it, if you could hand it, like if you could raise your hand so that the folks who don't have a pledge card can grab one from you. Thank you. And go ahead and take a couple of minutes to fill those out, and we are going to have some volunteers walking next to the rows to collect the pledge cards from y'all. This is also a really great time for me to mention that nothing about this event has been free. So if y'all would like to help contribute to cover the costs, which were mostly covered by personal folks, the banners were paid for, the venue was paid for, flyers, etc., you can go ahead and also drop any dollar donations into the basket, and it'll go directly to support this event and the Poor People's Campaign. So thank you. They're down there with the baskets. You can look for the volunteers with the baskets. Volunteers, can y'all like raise your baskets or your hands in the air? Perfect. There they are. Awesome. And then what we're going to do is we are going to take about 20 minutes to do some question and answer for y'all. So if you've been writing your questions on a note card, what we're going to do is have everyone line up in the middle aisle, and we'll hand y'all the microphone down here. So if you want to ask a question in front of everyone, you can go ahead and start lining up at the front row right here in the middle aisle.
What's your name, Jess?
Ann?
Ann?
We need more pledge cards. Is anybody sitting next to a pledge card that is sitting there? Raise your hand and we'll collect. Some pledge cards up here near the front. And if we don't have enough, that's a good thing, because we have 100, so. We are not quite done yet either. As y'all leave, if you have not turned in, the back of your program has the sign-in sheet. It's really important for us to get a head count. As you leave, there's a green box on the table near the door for you to drop your sign-in sheet on the program in. Does anyone not have a pledge card that needs one? Back there in the back by Kathy. Bathrooms are to your right down this hallway. Oh, and then ADA bathrooms are to your left. If you have questions that you don't want to ask publicly, you can also give your note cards to the volunteers. Perfect timing. What? To the baskets at the volunteers, in the same baskets as the donations. And if anybody has a question, you can go ahead and start lining up. Bridget's up here to help facilitate. If not, we must have done our jobs very well.
All right, come on up. We only have one question.
Y'all can keep lining up if you think there's more. I'm not watching.
Okay, come on up.
That's okay.
It's more to, the card was like to help you form a thought if you had one during the program.
You should say that it's also not just questions, but like...
And as we're having people line up to ask questions, get clarification, it's also, if you feel moved to share a story, we would love to be able to invite people to say a little bit of what's on your heart or in your head or experience that you've gone through. Okay. Think ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to go with the questions.
I just want to commend all of the speakers tonight and their courage and their amazing comments and the compassion that they have brought for each other, and hopefully that they have stirred in each of us. One of my favorite quotes is from a man named Patrick Meagher. He said, "Some people are so poor, all they have is money." I want you to think about that for a minute, because those people are the ones running our country and running our state legislature. And I'd like to know what we can do within the Poor People's Campaign to call out and address the kind of spiritual and moral poverty that is creating the economic and material poverty for others.
I will say I'm one person as part of the Poor People's Campaign, but what I can say is that over the 6 weeks, really leading up to June 21st, which will be a national mobilization to DC, that there will be themed weeks calling on the various ways that poverty and moral degradation has impacted our communities. And each of those themes, people will be coming forward to put forward their story and put forward a plan of action around each theme, so that after June 21st, we will be moving into sustained commitments through campaign work and through different actions that will advance us moving forward.
I just wanted to ask if there were specific civil disobedience acts planned.
That's a great question. So right now, the structure of the Poor People's Campaign, there's a national steering committee, there are state coordinating committees, and there will be still, the direct action is still in design with all of the structures. And so there is a retreat that is happening in the next couple of weeks to really kind of have the what the moral resistance will look like. And then after that, we'll have 2 trainings in Haywood to get people trained up on the exact specifics of what will happen over those 40 days.
That was my question. Thank you so much, especially for the emphasis on nonviolence.
Yes. This is a nonviolent direct action movement. That's how we ground ourselves spiritually in this act. And it is the basic principles that we move forward with. Other questions or feelings that people just want to share? Okay. Well, we really welcome and thank you all for being here. I know we were going to be closed out by one more song. Right? Okay, you want to introduce that?
So give it up one more time for the Voices of Pleasant Grove.
We have thoroughly enjoyed this program, and after hearing these stories, we know that there must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head,
Okay, and don't forget to, if you didn't turn in the sign-in sheet at the end of your program, make sure you do, because that's the way you'll get updates around the trainings, around the meetings, around the future planning for this. Thank you so much.